We oftentimes count incidents, we investigate failures, we put controls in place. That is the traditional safety, which we'll look at in this presentation as safety one. But now, here's the mindset shift. Every day, we have thousands of complex operations that happen and they go successful, and they happen without any issues, without any hitch. For instance, in the industry where I work in, we have aircraft taking off and landing safely. We also have in the oil and gas industry where every lifting is happening. We have tons of lifting equipment that are being lifted, and all these are carried out safely. In the hospital space, we also have jobs that are taking treatment of patients that are carried out successfully, and people going into those hospital places and come back without issues, and their problem is somewhat solved. But rarely people stop to take a recourse and sit back and ask themselves, what did we do today that was right, that we can enhance and build upon to make this our work more safer, more productive? People really stop to ask. But once there's an incident, you see people stop and start asking what went wrong, what barriers failed, and all of that. So that is what we're going to discuss today, what Safety 2 is about, and how we move our culture of not only reacting to failures when they occur, to learning from our everyday successes. When things happen, when things go well, do we celebrate them? Do we go back and think and say, okay, what did we do better today that we can build on to continue our work safer? So as we look through this discussion, we'll be talking about Safety 1, we'll move to Safety Differently, we'll talk about Safety 2, and I'll try as much as possible to use real life scenarios and examples of events from aviation, from healthcare, from oil and gas industry to illustrate what these concepts basically mean. So set us on board. In between our presentations, we'll be having teasers, and we're starting with the very first one. So for this very first one, the very first question, I'll read the question and I want you to take a side. And you tell us why you are taking that side. And for this very first one, I also need someone to unmute and speak to it. So the first question is, what is more dangerous, what you see or what you assume? So I'm going to the chat box to see our responses. So I'm there at the chat box. So what is more dangerous, what you see or what you assume? You can raise your hand, we would beckon on you to unmute and speak. Okay, Mrs. Angela, she says what you assume. Mr. Tajuddin says what I assume. Okay, I want to ask Mrs. Angela if she can unmute and speak so that we can know why she picked what you assume. Well, you can help me ask her to unmute so that she can speak.
Madam Angela, please can you unmute, ma'am? Hello, ma, are you there?
Okay, so good evening, everyone. For what you see, for me, you already know the pros, the cons of what you see. You already know all the dimensions to what you see. But what you assume, most times, you can't actually assess properly because you don't have the facts. And assumption can be misleading. Either you underplan or overplan. So for me, is what I assume.
Thank you very much. You are on point. So the answer is what you assume, because assumptions most times blinds us to hidden risks. You don't have all the facts, you don't have all the information. You can be misguided with the information you currently have. That's why in health and safety, we tend not to base our decisions on assumptions. We want to see facts, we want to see figures, we want to see it happen somewhere that we can relate to. Now, the second one in this round of teaser is, what runs but never walks, has a bed but never sleeps? You don't need to omit. Yeah, I need to just see if I can get my answer from the chat box. So what runs but never walks, has a bed but never sleeps? Okay. I'll take it again. What runs but never walks, has a bed but never sleeps? Okay, we are still waiting for responses. I'm on the chat box. So I'll take it again the last time. What runs but never walks, has a bed but never sleeps? Water, the brain. Okay, water is somewhat close. River, yeah, we have it from Jamal Rahim. So the answer there is river. The clue is on the screen. A river never runs. It runs but never walks. It has a bed but never sleeps. That's why if you are close to the river, you always see it flowing and you hear the sound of it, and it's cool and refreshing. Now let's get to the meat of our discussion today. Why are we having discussion on safety tool thinking, learning from what goes right, but not just what goes wrong? Why does this matter? Why are we bothering ourselves to have this discussion today? This is the reason. It is because the way we measure and manage safety today is incomplete. For those that are not open to or have not heard or tried safety tool thinking, they tend to have an incomplete information. They tend to make assumptions when things happen. That's why we want to change our thinking from not just focusing on just what goes wrong, what goes wrong, but also focus more on what goes right. Like I said earlier, we have most of our activities, our processes, our tasks that we complete every single day. These events, they happen and they are successful. But safety one, which is the traditional safety, is focused on just failure. It is about counting how many accidents and incidents. It is about looking at lost time injury rates. And also if there is a failure to compliance or conformity to a particular standard, to a particular rule, to a particular regulation, we need to change our focus. That's why there's this need for this mindset shift, that we need to change from simply counting our failures to understanding what our successes are and how we can build and enhance on them. Now, this is a take home that I want us to ponder and think about. How many of us can recall in our places of work, our organization, that we celebrated successes in safety, successes in occupational health and safety? These successes I'm referring to, they are not just successes that looks at zero accidents, zero incidents, zero medical treatment cases, zero first aid cases, zero lost time incidents. Successes with regards to what went right. What did we do in this particular project that made it a success? How many of us have celebrated that? It is a metric that we can incorporate into our KPIs in our various organizations. Now, let's look at the first one we're looking at is safety one, which is traditional safety. For many of us, we know the definition of safety as freedom from hazards, freedom from harm, freedom from events. This safety is the traditional approach most of us grew up in our career with. It defines safety as the absence of accident or incident. The focus of traditional safety is looking at preventing things from going wrong. To achieve this, there are several tools that we use in our workplaces. We look at root cause analysis after incident or after an audit and inspection has been carried out and a non-conformance was raised. I want to look at the root cause of why that non-conformance was raised. Then we'll now raise a preventative action, corrective action to prevent that thing from happening again. We also carry out audit and inspections in our workplaces. We check compliance and conformity with laws, standards, regulations, and procedures. But the models that bet safety one can come from the Heinrich Domino theory, the Swiss model that was proposed or brought about by J. Swissing. And these are some of the things that safety one looks about. But the idea for safety one is simple. We sit back and say, all right, this is our work. If we can stop accidents, if we can stop incidents from happening, then our system is safe, which means safety means absence of accident, there is no accident, there is no incident, everything is charlie, and there's no problem, then we can continue working every day, here and now. It is a reactive way of managing health and safety, and there's a need for us to have this mindset shift to the proactive, more proactive way, which is the safety tool. Now, let's take, for instance, the example of this incident that happened in 1977, the Tenerife aviation disaster that happened in Spain. We want to use an example of an aviation incident to talk about this. In my own case, I'm not an expert in investigation to say, okay, this is the actual root cause, but most of the information that I got in here are drawn from reports and events that were recorded pertaining to this incident. Now, in 1977, at Tenerife Airport in Spain, two Boeing 747 aircraft, they are large passenger aircraft that carries numbers of passengers, and both of them collide on the runway, and it killed about 583 persons. To date, this incident remains one of the deadliest accidents in the history of aviation, and we keep talking about it. But what were the issues that happened? We had the heavy fog that was at the airports at that time that reduced visibility, and in aviation, pilots, crew, and our journey management, we do not joke with visibility. We ensure we have our visibility at the right stage before we launch for any flight or any operation. Now, there was also miscommunication between the pilots of both aircraft and also between the air traffic control tower. There was also ambiguity in phraseology. Phraseology is the standard terms that we use in communicating in aviation. At that time, the phraseology used was not so consistent. So I can say something from my end, and the person on the other hand can mean it to be something else and do something entirely different from what I said. So the KLM captain thought that he had clearance to take off, but he did not have clearance to take off from air traffic control. So this resulted, or were part of the contributing factors that caused the incident. Now, for the scope of safety one, is going to look at this incident as predictable. What do? They had more rules, they had more checklists, they had more items to the already existing checklist. They enhanced the radio communication procedures within the aviation space, and they now introduced the standard physiology like cleared for takeoff. So that one is easy for the pilots to understand or decode from the message sent by the air traffic control that is cleared to take off. But if we take a pause and look at it, globally, we have over 100,000 commercial flights that happen per day. Commercial flights, successful flights from takeoff to landings, over 100,000. In Africa alone, the Johannesburg airport, which is the busiest airport in Africa, records over 250 flights daily. While in Nigeria, we have over 99 to 101 flights that are taken off and landed safely. These are successful events. No one talks about there's a flight from Lagos to Abuja and it took off and landed. What happened during that flight? Nobody talks about it. But when there's an incident, you hear media, everybody start becoming subject matter expert and talking about it. But the shift for safety two becomes so important because we need to see how we achieve those successes and how we can change our mindset to be able to celebrate this and use that to enhance our system. Now, from the incident we have on our screen, after it, safety in the aviation space actually improved. But if we notice what has happened, the investigation from that incident focused entirely on what went wrong, but this failed to look at the events that happened that went right and were so successful. There's a need for us to have this mindset shift so that we can be able to achieve more. Now, when that incident happened, imagine you were the safety manager of that airline or the both airlines that had the incident. What would you have done? Would you have said, okay, let's introduce more rules, let's put more protocols, let's add more checklists? Or do you sometimes stop in your own company or your organization or place of work and say, what successful events do we have every day so that we can prevent the failures from happening and know how we can manage them when they do. But there are some limitations to safety one. One of them is it is reactive. It waits for accidents to happen before we go to learn. Another is it focuses on blame culture. It often looks at the worker as the problem, introduces human error, human factor into the equation, and say workers they are to blame. Then it ignores everyday successes. It doesn't want to celebrate the successes. It doesn't want to look at the wins. There are thousands of events that happen in our workplaces, complex tasks that we achieve successfully, and we do not go back to stop and reason and say, what did we do better and how can we use it to enhance our system? And safety one creates a rigid compliance system that tends to strangle or make flexibility impossible. Now let's look at the case of the healthcare industry. In this case, imagine you are the patient. You have complaints of stomach pains and headache, and you are rushed to the hospital. Now you are at the hospital, and somehow they gave you some drugs that make you feel sleepy, and you were placed side by side on a bed with another patient that has cancer on his leg and needs to go for amputation. Now, a nurse walks into your ward and picks you and takes you to the theater. They do all of the surgical procedure and they remove one of your leg. Remember, you went there for stomach pain and headache. Now you are coming out of the hospital with one leg missing that is already amputated. Now, when this will be investigated, the focus of this incident could be on the nurse. The nurse took the wrong patient, and the investigation will blame her for negligence, for failure to follow procedure or whatnot. But what about the system design? What are the system issues that could have made this nurse to make this error? It would be likely that when you went into the hospital and after your registration at the counter, the nurse gave you an identical wristband. Maybe those that were supposed to go for cancer operation or amputation, they gave them red and they also gave you red, and you were on the same ward with that person. Or what if somehow you have the same first or last name with the other patient and it was confused? Or they were unable to identify you as a patient that was supposed to stay in another ward. Or maybe the hospital was so congested that the only place that they could put you was the ward that they put oncology or cancer patients. All of this will be ignored for safety one, and the focus will be on the nurse that made the error. Now, they've missed the chance to fix that deeper problem. But then, how can we make the system better? How can we make it safer so that workers feel safe to operate and they feel that freedom to carry out their job? We'll now take a pause here again and look at another teaser. So I'll go again to the chat box and see your responses. The more of me you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? The more of me you take, the more of me, the more you leave behind. What am I? Knowledge. Okay. Let's keep it coming. Chineme, thank you for your response. Time. Okay. Mr. John. Footsteps. This person has access to my slide. Valiyu, you've linked my slide. So the answer is footsteps. Mr. David Timothy, thank you, footsteps. Now let's have a second one. What comes once in a minute, twice in a moment, but never in 1,000 years? Some persons have access to my slide. So the answer is the alphabet M. It comes once in a minute, twice in a moment, but you can never see the letter M in 1,000 years. Now, we are going to make this mindset shift now. We've looked at what safety one is, traditional safety. Now we're shifting our attention to safety differently. For many of us, it might be strange to us learning about safety 1, safety differently, safety 2. But these are terms that we might not be used to, but they are things that we already know, but we might not know how to properly place them. Now, safety differently was promulgated by Sidney Dekker, and he did this to respond to the challenges that was posed by safety 1. The message he wanted to drive is very strong and powerful. What is he trying to say? People are not the problem. The people are the solution. Do not see my workers, or do not see your fellow workers, or do not see yourself as the problem, but see yourself as solution, as change makers. The belief is that workers don't just follow rules. They don't just decide, okay, we want to follow rules today. But sometimes they are faced with situations, instances, and scenarios that are so difficult to navigate through that they have to constantly adapt so that they will keep the system, the company, want to make it operate. Under pressure, you have time constraints, you have lack of resources or limited resources, you have unexpected challenges that are outside their control. So the people decide to say, okay, what can we do differently today? Can we change the way we work? Can we adapt or tweak the procedure so that we achieve this? Now let's go back to the nurse scenario, but this time we're not doing amputation. We are going to look at nurses in a busy emergency ward. For those of us that have seen it in movies or visit the hospital once or twice, you know that the emergency ward is more like a war front. It comes with different cases of illnesses, both those with serious injuries, less injuries, those brought in dead. In fact, to an hospital, if you are not in an emergency situation, you do not go there. But if you are in a state of an emergency, that's the first place you are being taken to. You are stabilized before you are referred to another department. Now imagine nurses that are in that emergency ward. They have lots of tasks. Like I said, it's like a war front. So then sometimes to manage that task, they may need to swap roles. You can see one nurse attending to a patient with burnt injury, can go and attend to a patient that has bleeding, can go and meet another patient that is unconscious. So you see them multitasking and doing different things. Sometimes too, they tend to skip formalities. Maybe they have a procedure on how to handle burnt injury, but they see that at this particular point, we start to do A, do B, do C. This patient is already unconscious, so let's keep to procedure 7 so that we can revive this patient. Or sometimes they might tend to reorder the steps. Okay, this patient came in this way. Can we do this first before we go back to this other way? What these nurses are doing, they are not trying to disobey the procedure or neglect what was laid down. They're just trying to display their level of expertise, facing the issues that are in front of them. They do not want to say, let's wait and start going from procedure A to procedure Z. They want to ensure that they do what they can do to make sure that that patient is safe and is revived and turned to normal. Now, what safety differently looks at is, it focuses less on blaming the workers, but more on engaging them, telling them that we understand what you are going through. We see your problems. We understand what you are facing. I want to see how you are navigating them and tell us how we can simplify this procedure, how we can make these rules easy for you to be able to follow. And when you are faced with circumstances that are beyond you or that seem to be beyond what you can handle, you can tweak it to achieve what you want. That is what safety differently looks at. But everything has the advantage and disadvantage, and safety differently is no different from it too. So it has its own limitations. It can be hard to measure and integrate. And in industries like mine, in aviation where I work, and in nuclear and other high reliability organizations, safety differently often demands rooms that are making it difficult for workers to adapt, such that these industries are looking at the blank industries where you have the rules that you must strictly follow. And it is true. You do not try to bend those rules because these rules are written in blood. They are written for a reason so that you follow it to achieve what it is intended. These rules do not leave room for flexibility and allow the workers to decide on what to do on their own. They have to follow it as it is. So if you are working in such industries like aviation, nuclear, and also in medicine, sometimes too, you don't have this room for flexibility and trying to change the way a system you work. Another disadvantage of safety differently is it allows the worker to adapt and change whatever they are doing so that they can be able to achieve the end result. But sometimes it oversimplifies the complexity of large organization in the sense that it tends to make very serious or mundane issues seem so mega and that they are not so relevant, or try to play with it that you can go around it and still achieve what you want to achieve. Safety differently, yes, tends to allow the workers to adapt and change the course of their work, but it did not solve the problem. And that is where we have the other order coming in, safety 2. But before we talk about safety 2, let's do another teaser to step us down a bit. I will read the question and I will look at the chat box to get your responses. I am light as a feather, but even the strongest person can't hold me for long. What am I? Okay, you are close to it. I'm just looking for the right physiology. Breath. Okay, yeah, Mr. Tosin has said it. The answer is breath. Now, the next one, the more you share me, the less I become. What am I? The more you share me, the less I become. What am I? Mr. Jamal. Money. Who said money? So the correct answer is secret. So the more you share a secret, the less the secret becomes. So it becomes open information. So if you tell your secret to one person and to the next person, in fact, when you tell it to the next person, it's no longer a secret. It's now everybody's business. Now let's go back to our discussion. We've looked at safety 1, safety differently, and now we've seen the need for a more robust system, which is safety 2. Now, safety 2 was defined by Eric Olnagel. He reframed the concept of safety entirely. What did he do? He defined safety, which is safety 2 now, not as absence of accident, not that we are not having accident or incident. He defined it as the presence of successful conditions. When we carry out events, when we carry out tasks, and these tasks are successful, that is what he defined it as safety 2. Instead of asking, why did this accident happen? Change your mind and say, why do things usually go right? So even on the good days where you have things going Charlie, very good, you ask yourself at the end of this day, what did we do? How did we achieve it? What did we do better to achieve this? You change the focus of always asking yourself, why did the accident always happen? For safety 2, they see the variations in humans as strengths. From worker A to worker B, there's these variations and they see it as positives and strengths that they want to build upon. Now let's take our mind back to the oil and gas industry. Remember, it is one of the industries that does heavy lifting after construction. Now, every day in, day out, in offshore locations, onshore locations, and oil and gas businesses, they have lifting operations that carry that we can say they are 99% successful. They happen, there was no incident, no event, no dangerous occurrence, none of this happening. But the day that 1% of failure now happens, they start asking what went wrong, what barriers faced, what are the holes in that sheet that this event was able to penetrate and cause this event to actually happen. But safety 2 will say, no, that is not our thing. Safety 2 will ask, what did the workers, what did the supervisors, what did those that plan these high-risk lifting operations, what did they do differently? How did they manage with the weather conditions? How did they communicate during these lifting operations? Or how did they manage with the equipment lifting? Sometimes when a crane wants to lift an equipment and found out that no crane in this world can be able to lift that equipment because the weight of that equipment is higher than the capacity, the standard weight limit of any crane. They introduce the tandem lifting. 2 cranes will lift. Sometimes you have more than 2 cranes lifting. People do not go back to ask themselves, okay, what did we do in these lifting operations and made it successful that we can learn from? By studying these successes or these improvements, we're able to improve and reinforce the practices that makes us safe. Safety 2 is a very resilient system, and it calls for investigation and thorough look at to see how we can build on it to enhance safer operations. The resilience of Safety 2 allows for a system to adapt and continue functioning under stress. So when events changes, they are able to adapt and say, okay, this is the way to go. Safety 2 is a proactive way and it is not reactive. It does not just look at accidents that happen. It tends to look at near misses or when normal works are carried out successfully and learn from it. Let's also take another example from the offshore industry. Imagine the offshore drilling rig and imagine that a blowout event was about to happen. For those of us that are not in the oil and gas space, blowout is the uncontrolled release of crude oil, natural gas from a well when the pressure control system fails. That is when you now have either natural gas or crude oil spilling to the surface, and sometimes we now have fire. Now, this was about to happen, but it was narrowly avoided because a driller, one of the staff, noticed that the pressure was unusual and decided to shut down the operation. But if Safety 1 wants to look at this, it will say, we almost had a disaster. Let's investigate why this pressure is rising. But Safety 2 will say, no. What defenses worked? What training did these persons that made these defenses to work, what training do they have? How was their teamwork spirit? Were they working as a team or were they working in silos? Or was it a case of institutional awareness? Was the driller aware of what is happening around him? And that was why I was able to respond on time to prevent this event from happening. That is what Safety 2 will look at. Safety 2 will focus on the successes of everyday drilling operations that happened. Maybe at some point in time, they were looking at their system and saw abnormal pressure rise and decided to take action. Safety 2 comes in and try as much as possible to investigate the successes that went wrong, went right, and try to use it to enhance the system. But Safety 2 creates the culture of trust, where the workers can trust the system, gives them room to innovate on their system, and also allows them to have proactive improvements such that they do not wait for events to happen before they start to look at what went wrong. They celebrate successes and investigate what went right with the goal of improving the system. Now, we cannot talk about Safety 1, Safety 2, and safety differently without looking at this concept of varieties of human work. We're going to look at work as imagined, work as prescribed, work as disclosed, work as done, and we'll take an example from the aviation industry. So Mr. Eric teaches us that work is not just one thing, not just looking at, I resume work today, I finish it, I go home, I resume the next day, and I keep on repeating the cycle all over again. But it says no, work can be seen in these 4 facets. Now, what is work as imagined? It's usually the manager's view. In the morning, the manager, the supervisor, top management, or whoever is in charge imagines that today I'm going to produce 10 cartons of noodles. That is what he imagines, and that is what he perceives to be the result of or the outcome of what the production team will bring out. Now, what is work as prescribed? Work as prescribed is written down work in terms of standard operating procedures, manuals, regulations. There are guidelines that the workers would follow. They are work as prescribed. They are written down. They are in black and white. You must do this, you must do this, you must do this. If you don't do this, this could happen. This is work as prescribed. Now, work as disclosed is after the work has been done, the feedback that the worker gives back to management in meetings and in audits. The work has done is the messy type, is a real life version. You've planned your work and envisioned that this is what you want to achieve. The work that you've planned is written down somewhere. It is prescribed in the manuals, in the SOPs. And sometimes when it goes successful, the workers come back and give you feedback. Oh, today we were able to produce the 10 cartons of noodles that we agreed that we produce in the morning. What the worker has done is that messy type, is that scenario where the workers are subjected to all of the conditions, to manpower, to resources, to time, and are able to navigate through all of these hurdles and come out with the output. Now, the goal here is looking at work that you imagine to do and work that you want to do, which is work has done. Now, look at the example of the aviation industry. Sorry, I'm always using the aviation industry. The pilots, while planning for his flights, need to ensure that he checks the weather condition. He checks the weather at his departure station. He tries to get weather en route and weather at his arrival destination. The manual usually tells the pilot to check for forecast before flight. Sometimes he can give some avenues for the pilot to check. But in reality, when you see the pilot planning for flights, they try to talk with other crews, maybe those that have flown on that route recently, or they try to check on radar systems that is on board their aircraft, or they try to get the information from ground station, from air traffic control, and other sources they could want. Or they could pick up their phone and go to a weather app and say, let me look at the weather that is in Bayelsa. I'm flying from Lagos to Warri. I might pass through Bayelsa. Let me look at the weather situation at that location. The goal for safety 2 is to ensure that there's a variation. It's not that it's a weakness. It helps to keep the system functioning and rotating so that the workers can be able to adapt themselves to changing workplace scenario. Now, we want to discuss the idea or the concept of practical drift, which is the intermediate between work as imagined and work as done. Before then, we'll take another teaser so that we'll try to take a pause and calm ourselves down. So the first one is what travels around the world but stays in one spot? Nobody said cake or money. So what travels around the world but stays in one spot? Sun. Okay, time. You are close. No, you are not close. You have a different opinion, but then that is not the answer I'm looking out for. It travels around the world but stays in one point. The sun is stationary. Planet moves around the sun. It doesn't travel. Shadow. Postal stamp. Mr. Abel, thank you very much. The answer is postal stamp. Now let's take another one. What can fill a room but takes up no space? Mr. Tejiri, air can occupy space. What can fill a room but takes up no space? Fragrance, noise, lights. You are right, Mr. Ladoja. Thank you very much. So now let's move our mindset now to practical drift. Remember, I was mentioning work as planned, the concept that the managers will imagine that this is what we want to achieve for this day. Practical drift looks at the variations between work as planned versus work as conducted. Now we have procedures. Do this, and do this. We have the practice in reality that tends to not be realistic with what the procedure is saying. And this is what practical drift is all about. It is a difference between work as planned, work as imagined versus work as conducted. And this drift often introduces its own level of risks. Other times, when it is managed well by the workers, it improves efficiency and safety and allows room for variation. Now, let's go back to the healthcare industry again. Imagine you go to the hospital and you want to take your drips, and you are connected to the system that monitors how the drips enters into your body, how it's being put into your body. But the system now comes up with a central alert system that says it is too slow. But then the nurse decides to say, no, I don't want to use this system. Let me introduce one that is with a mobile app that can allow me to work freely and carry out the job as intended. This is outside the procedure because the procedure did not give space for the worker to bring his iPhone or Android phone to use an app to monitor the drip. But the nurse was able to carry out that action and the life of that patient was saved and the alarm was then okay. Now, what will safety 2 now look at? Safety 1 will say no, the worker was outside the procedure. Yes, the patient survived, but the worker did not follow procedure. But safety 2 does not punish this drift because the work as planned, work as imagined, was written down in SOPs and procedures, and it was a statement by senior management that he must do this. But work as carried out or conducted now becomes a whole ball game because the nurse is now faced with a scenario that he or she cannot navigate through, but decided to do another alternative that was able to save the situation. So what safety 2 will now ask is, what conditions allowed it? Was there network issues? Was there loss in power? Was the system itself faulty that made her to decide to use a mobile phone? Or should we formalize the use of mobile phone? Or maybe decide that, okay, we need to meet a mobile app developer to develop an app for us to manage this process so that it can be plan B in case this primary system fails. Safety 2 encourages practical drifts and makes it easier for the workers to adapt and change their role of work. So now the nurse was able to carry their activities safely or successfully, but she did not follow the procedure. While safety 1 will look at failures in the system, safety 2 will convert these failures to successes and say, okay, can we use this success or this activity that was carried out to enhance this process to make it a bit safer? So that is the goal of safety 2. It tends to create or merge these practical drifts that exist between work as planned and work as conducted. Now, what safety 2 does is trying as much as possible to reduce risks-based decisions to a lowest level. Yes, it empowers workers, it empowers nurses, it empowers staff to carry out and make decisions to the lowest possible level, but it should be able to protect them. Now, if you look at the oil and gas industry, they have this program called Stop Work Authority. If you work in some of these companies, you are given a Stop Work Authority card that mandates you, even as a cleaner, as a security, to initiate stop work. The goal is not to stop work and go and sleep. It's to stop work and say, let's discuss what the issue is and make it safer. But the stop work can be initiated by anyone, and it protects the worker. Once the worker feels that there is any hunch or feeling that there's a sense of danger, they can initiate stop work, no matter their rank. This is one of the empowerment that safety 2 does. It also removes bureaucratic delays. It allows the workers to have trust and accountability in the system and makes everyone responsible for safety. So they do not see safety as the safety man's job or my supervisor's job. They see it as part of their own job. Now, let's pause and ask ourselves, wherever we work, would your organization support a junior staff, let's say a cleaning staff or a security operative, to stop operation? Or would that person face backlash? If you understand the concept of safety 2, it tends to make workers to have this empowered responsibility to act when events are happening. Now, we need to see how we can manage incident through safety 2. Like I said earlier, safety 1 looks at what failed, what are the barriers that did not work, what are the holes in our sheaths are able to allow this event to happen, what went wrong. But safety 2 looks at what usually goes right. Why did we carry this activity and there was no issue? Now, see the example of aviation again. We'll look at the case of runway incursion. Incursion in aviation is when you have an aircraft, a vehicle, or a person enter a restricted space, like the runway where the aircraft operates on, without having license to operate. Now, a pilot might drive his aircraft or move his aircraft into an area where he does not have clearance to enter. But safety 1 will look at that pilot and say, was the pilot drunk? Was he sleeping? Looking at the human factor issues that was surrounding the pilot or crew that made him to make that decision to enter that restricted space. But safety 2 will pause and go back and look at those successful events where air traffic control will tell a pilot to hold at a particular point and not enter a particular point. They will look at those defenses that were working at that time and enhance those systems with the goal of making the system safer. The lesson is not just to look at the error, but to make the system tough, to make it resilient, to be able to act. Now, safety 2 has the influence on workplace culture, also with safety 1. For safety 1, it builds compliance. It looks at compliance. It focuses on fear and blame, and it allows workers to hide deviations. So when the workers carry out tasks, they tend to hide them. But for safety 2, it encourages learning and trust and builds transparency. And workers are free to share their adaptations openly. They are free to say, okay, we're able to do this thing, but I was able to change how I did it. I worked around the situation, but I achieved it. So what safety 2 will be looking at is the successes in that event and what was done differently to make the end result to be achieved. Now, before we look at the summary, let's have one last break to make us feel at ease. Now, I want someone to raise his hand and do this tongue twisters. You say this 5 times without stopping. She says seashells by the seashore, and the shells she said, it's even difficult for me to read, but let's see if somebody can try. So I'm going to the participant session and see who can try. If you can say this repeatedly 5 times, Mr. Wali is having a present for you. Mr. Wali has goodies to share. Okay, Mr. Ebe, I will ask you to unmute and okay, sorry, Mr. Ebe, you're the one I want to unmute and speak. So I think you can unmute and speak. So okay. You say it 5 times repeatedly without stopping.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells by the seashore.
It's not fast. It's not fast, Mr. Ebe. Okay, let's have somebody else to try. Mr. James, I've asked you to unmute, so you can unmute and speak.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the
okay, Mr. James, let's have a pause here and have someone else to try. Mr. Jamal, I've asked you to unmute. Sorry, I've asked you to unmute and speak. So you have Mr. James. He tried his attempt. Let's hear from Mr. Jamal.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
She sells seashells by the seashell, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells by the seashore, and the shells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she shells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she shells are surely seashores. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the shells she shells are surely seashores.
Okay, you're on point. Let's have one last person. Mr. Emmanuel James. I've asked you to unmute so that you can speak. Mr. Emmanuel James, you can unmute and speak. Mr. James. Okay, we are not hearing from you. Let's have Mr. Okon, the last person. You can mute and speak.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
She sells seashells by the seashore, and the
Good evening, everyone.
surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the cells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the cells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the cells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the cells she sells are surely seashells. She sells seashells by the seashore, and the cells she sells seashells by the seashore, and the cells she sells are surely seashells.
I hope our head is not going to blow from this. So thank you all for those that participated. Mr. Jamal, Mr. Okun, Mr. Emmanuel James, thanks for your attempt. And who was the last person? Then James too. Thank you all for attempting. So now let's do a recap of what we've been discussing so far. We were looking at safety 1 versus safety 2. So let's summarize. Safety 1 focuses on what goes wrong when accidents happen, when event occurs, and they tend to investigate and look at the barriers that failed, the holes that were in the cheese that could not hold the event from happening. But safety 2 looks at successes, events that went right, and how we're able to carry those events and see if the procedures that were written down were followed, or they were somehow meandered to achieve the common goal. Safety 1 is more reactive, which means it has to wait for an accident or an event to occur before it steps into action. But safety 2 is proactive. It does not wait. It looks at everyday wins. And although, like I said earlier, we are doing safety 2, but many of us do not know. When you investigate your near misses or near miss occurrence in your company, you are carrying out safety 2. Then on worker side, safety 1 looks at workers as problem. They look at the human factors that are involved in the event. But safety 2 sees them as solutions. The workers are backbone, are the strength of this system. Safety 1 tends to minimize failures, try to make sure that an event does not happen and everything goes shally, and we're able to achieve it properly. But in the case of safety 2, it tends to maximize success by celebrating events that go wrong. So if you have 1 year or one month or 1 day or 1 week and everything was successful, you need to look at what went right and tend to look at how it was carried out and use it with the goal of enhancing your system. While safety 1 fosters blame, focusing on the worker's failure, safety 2 encourages learning. So at the end of every successful event, safety 2 calls the workers together and manage it and says, okay, let's brainstorm and look at what we did right during this phase of this project or this task, and it's works well for us. But both systems have their limitations. For safety 1, it is too narrow. It has this one-directional approach, sort of. For safety differently, like we mentioned earlier, it is too idealistic. It focuses on the worker and allows them to make decisions to add. Safety differently is a bridge between safety 1 and safety 2. But safety 2 is more encouraged because it is still young and it is yet at their stage of regulatory integration, because it does not want to look at the black and white that you've written down. It wants to bridge the gap between work as planned and work as conducted. But the future is not just looking about safety 1 or safety 2 or safety differently. If you want to have a holistic health and safety management system, it is important that you blend 3 of them. So you pick these 3 stuffs you are seeing in this slide and put them into a blender and have a mix of them You do not abandon safety one because you feel it is focusing on blame, it is too reactive. Or you do not tend to say you don't look at safety differently because it gives workers that power to do as they like. Or you can have a blend of safety one, safety two, and safety differently, and make it to have a balanced approach, to have a mixed approach so that your system can be more robust. So what are our takeaways from this session? Safety one looks at the absence of failure. Safety differently sees worker as the solution to workplace problem. But safety two focuses on presence of successful capacity. We were able to achieve this, and this is the result. Let's look at what we did to make this event successful. Now, we discussed about practical drift that works at planned, work as imagined versus work as conducted or carried out, and try to see the difference between them. Then this session tends to build resilience as a cornerstone for the future of safety. While you can have a blend of the three systems, it is important that they have them in your system and they make your system more resilient and stronger to face whatever that would come. And in conclusion, safety is not about preventing every error. It is about creating systems where human performance can thrive, where people have the authority and are empowered to adapt, and where they see success as a normal and successes that they can learn from, not when they are failures and want to learn from failures. Yes, you can learn from successes. But then let's take this question back to organizations. And today is a Sunday, tomorrow is Monday. Ask yourself this: are we only measuring the absence of accidents, or are we actively building the presence of success? Should you only celebrate when you have zero incidents, zero dangerous occurrence, zero lost time incidents, and the likes, or you have 1 million man hours without LTI? But change your mindset to looking at those successes. You carry that activity in your workplace, and you're able to achieve XYZ. How did you achieve it, and how do you want to learn from it to make your system stronger? Thank you. Over to you, Ali.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Please let us give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, Abanom. That was really, really enlightening. A wonderful presentation, a well dissected, engaging, and expertly delivered. If there's any grammar like that, so that I won't twist my tongue like the tongue twister the other time. That was excellently delivered, and this is a new call out action to everyone. A lot of things have been discussed from head to toe, and we believe that we have taken a lot of things on. It's time for us to go back to our drawing board, to go back to where we left, to go back to what we do, our practices, review it in terms of what we have been taught today, based on traditional safety, which is task safety one, and the safety two, which should be the new, which is the way things should be. And like we were told, there must be a blend of the two. A lot of things were discussed today about how we can build workplace resilience, not just by looking at what, not just by looking at the what we can call the absence of accidents, the negative KPI, for example, like looking at number of incidents, number of near misses, zero LTI. While these ones are also good, we should also look at proactive indicators. What are the objectives that we set for ourselves? Are we able to achieve those objectives? For you not to have any LTI, it means that you have put a lot of practices in place, a lot of proactive measures that you have put in place, including your training, including your capacity building, including the supervision, inspection, and the auditing that you do, and every other activities that you put together in order to ensure that you do not have that accident. So it's not only about celebrating zero accidents, it's also about celebrating those wins. It is high time we don't focus on only traditional safety where we look at where we are failure focused, but we should also look at proactive indicators that help us to also shape in our organization. And Oga Abanom has excellently delivered this. He spoke about traditional safety, talking about the species model, which focus on barriers, root cause analysis, auditing, compliance, and the likes. And he gave us incident of a particular disaster that happened in 1977. And he also told us about the limitations of the traditional safety. And he also talked about one of the approach, which is Sidney Dekker, Safety Differently, that talks about human being the solution, that the solution lies with the people. Solutions are not about people are the solutions and not problems to every incident that happens. And this is an approach of Sidney Dekker. I think Sidney Dekker is one of the safety experts that we have in the world of today. And I think that you can also go online and learn about safety differently. Yes, safety differently, where we inculcate people, we inculcate workers to also be in the show when it comes to addressing safety issues. Then it talks about the limitation of safety differently, where it is very hard to measure and integrate, and sometimes it can be conflicting with regulations, because sometimes there is a belief that whenever there's an accident, yes, we need to look at top management. Top management is always the pointing out, especially for traditional safety. We point at top management all the time. However, when it comes to safety differently, there are a lot of more aspects to it, and this was definitely highlighted and explained by Oga Abanom. And he also gave us many teasers. Then he now mentioned the safety two thinking, which is where we ought to be, which is about building resilience, building adaptive capability, learning from normal work, proactive, not reactive, and promote innovations and trust. Then he made mention of the varieties of human work, which are also been highlighted, the SOPs that we developed, the management views, work as done, actual reality, reported works, and the likes. Then he also mentioned about practical tips, about what we plan to do. When you set objective, you should work towards achieving your objective. And sometimes there can be variations. And these are part of the things that you should also look out for and also celebrate when you achieve them. So a lot of things we have discussed about workplace culture, differentiating between these two, and having a blend of both safety one and safety two, which is a very excellent presentation. And I believe that today we have taken a new dimension, and we are not only going to focus on just preventing accidents, but building a holistic safety culture, which the new safety two methodology, which Abanom has presented to us, will help us to achieve. So thank you so much, Mr. Abanom. Thank you, Abanom, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving us a bit of the wealth, the ocean of knowledge that you have. So at this point, if you have any question, please let us ask our question. If you have any question, please let us ask our question. We can raise our hands. Let's raise our hands. Let's raise our hands if you have any question. If you have any question, please let us raise our hands. Any question? We can raise our hand in the chat room if you have whatever you want to ask. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for the time that you have spent with us. We sincerely appreciate you, and it has been a wonderful moment, a wonderful opportunity to also learn from Abanom. Thanks so much for the wonderful presentation. And at this point, well, where we are now is to present this little certificate to you, Mr. Abanom. We sincerely appreciate you. We sincerely appreciate your time. As you can see from the comment section, it has been a highly impactful session. And this is the Enlightenment Series 88, meaning that you are our speaker who excellently delivered and educated us on the 88 webinar series. And this is our certificate of appreciation presented to no other person but Abanom Iriogene Isakpa for sharing your invaluable insights as a guest speaker at our weekly enlightenment series on safety tool thinking, learning from what goes wrong and learning from what goes right, and not just what goes wrong. And I must tell you that this particular presentation will actually shape our thinking from looking at our reactive indicators when we don't have near misses, when we have lesser unsafe act. In fact, some of us, we have a tracker that tracks our number of unsafe act and unsafe condition, and we only focus on that. But what about the inspection that we do? The number of inspection that we do, the number of proactive measures that we put in place, we do not look at these things and also celebrate them. And Abanom has taught us today that we should not just sit down and rely on our negative indicators. We should also create means to also look at our positive indicators in order to drive a holistic safety culture. And this has been excellently delivered by no other person than Abanom Iriogene Isakpa. Thank you so much, Abanom. And we proudly present this token of certificate of appreciation to you. Over to you, Abanom.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for having me for today's session. It was also a learning for me. I had to go back to open my NEBOSH diploma notes and start learning once again what safety 1, safety differently, and safety 2 is. It's also a learning for me and an enlightenment session too. Thank you. Thank you all for attending.
All right, thank you so much, Abanom. And at this point, please let us all unmute and appreciate our speaker for today's presentation. Please, you can all unmute now. But before we unmute, let us also know that in a couple of weeks again, we'll be having another wonderful presentation where one of our professionals too will also be educating us. So let us ensure that we hang around and also join for the next webinar series. Also, our Spark with Cordal, the second episode will also be coming up very soon. And it's an enlightening session. We had our winners. I think we had up to 5 winners. The first winner won 55,000 naira. I think second winner 35, third winner 20. Then we had 15,000 and 10,000 like that. That are those that participated in the Spark with Cordal one. So the next episode will be coming up soon, and you might be a lucky winner. And our focus for the next episode will be around ISO 14001. It will be around ISO, and the Spark with Cordal is not only about ISO. The topic can vary. It can be on mental health. It can be on sustainability. It can be on quality management. It can be on safety. It can be on mental health. Any subject matter questions will be asked, and the winners will be given their gift. And let us not forget also, Setting the Pace 4.0 is around the corner. Yes, Setting the Pace, your usual Setting the Pace 4.0 is around the corner, and we are actually working on giving and delivering the best to you. So stay tuned for Setting the Pace 4.0. If you have companies that can sponsor us for 4.0, we'll be glad to have them. And finally, for all your safety trainings, for your ISO trainings, ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, IMS, health and safety, AYOSH courses, any of your safety needs certifications, you can always reach out to us at Cordal Safety Consult. Our final quarter of the year calendar is out, and let people, professionals like you, have started registering. Thank you once again for your time. Thank you for showing up as usual. We appreciate your presence, and we do not take it for granted. If you also feel, even though for the case of Abanom, we had to drag him, we have been dragging him for over a month, if not over a year, that you need to speak with us. And finally, he was able to create time from his busy schedule to also be here. But however, if you feel like you can also present, you also have things that we can also learn from you, you can reach out to us. Tell us your topic, and let's fix a date, and let us also learn from you. This is a platform for everyone to learn and to also teach and educate others. So we are looking up to everyone. Let us come together. Let us create a culture where we can all collectively build our competence, our capacity, and build a better world together. Thank you so much once again. and do enjoy the rest of the week. And on this note, let us unmute and let us appreciate our speaker, Abanom. Please let us unmute and say thank you to Abanom for the wonderful presentation. Thank you. It's our culture to unmute here and appreciate our speaker, so let us do that. Let us unmute. I've not seen anybody unmute and appreciate the speaker at this point. Who is marking the screen? Who is marking the screen like this?
Wally, I just enabled people to.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you,
Thank you so much.
Abanom.
Thank you, Abanom. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abanom. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, Mr. Hero.
Thank you, Abanom,
God
and
bless
everyone.
you.
Thank you, Abanom. I can see everyone is thanking you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we hope we are going to see you again, Mr. Abanom, for another Enlightenment series.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And on this note, we are going to count as usual from 10 to 1 while we close it for today. So we start from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do have a lovely day ahead. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Thank you.
Kamarudin.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Awani.
Mr.
Thank
Yusuf.
you very much.
Thank
Abanom,
you,
thank you
everyone.
guys.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Abanom. Thank you, Mr. Abel. Thank you, Ms. Onifade. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Thank you, Engineer Sylvester. Thank you, Mr. Ayodele. Thank you, Mr. Ayodeji. Thank you, Mr. Oluwaseun Olayinka. Thank you, Mrs. Mariam. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone. Ogene Tega. Good luck. Thank you, Engineer Sylvester. Thank you, everyone. I can see who don't get it, Obong. Thank you, always here. Many of us are always been here. Thank you all for your wonderful session. We are open to see you in the next webinar series, which will be our 89th series. And very soon we'll get into 100. Don't worry, very soon. Just ensure that we stay intact, we stay tuned, and we continue to learn and build our capacity and competency together. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you.